In this series of videos, we're looking in depth at outer planet transits to various points in the horoscopes of the clients who are being interviewed. And we're underlining the understanding that we have that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are outer planets, and that's the important thing. It's not so important whether it is Uranus or Neptune or Pluto, but that it is an outer planet is the most important part of what's going on. And then we look at the transited planet to find out something about how to understand this. So we're equating these outer planets with the keywords freedom, creativity, and evolution. And you're going to hear these being spoken of a lot. I'll read from the text of our book, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which Julia, Sophia, and I have co-authored, and it's coming out later this year. The urge for freedom offers the necessary tension to bring greater awareness of our ability to think and communicate clearly. During this transit, nothing is easy to pin down. Thoughts appear and disappear at the speed of lightning. Ingenious ideas manifest with the clarity and ephemerality of a star shower, and we must remain ever vigilant if we wish to catch them. This busy, stimulating time has us forging entirely new connections with people and ideas, ascertaining new associations, recalibrating the network of association within our extremely active, impatient mind. So Julia is going to interview Michael, and let's hope we get a deeper understanding of the meaning of this transit.
So in 1996, you were 16, so just on the precipice of adulthood, and you had a Uranus opposite Mercury transit 3 times that year. And that's quite a dynamic, I would say, fast-paced and probably disruptive influence. So in hindsight, how would you see the urge for freedom surfacing during that time?
Great question. I think, well, at the time, obviously, I wasn't really aware of astrology, but the energy around me at the time was, I mean, effectively, I was living in a council flat, a tower block, and that could be looked at as a tower card, potentially. Um, and at the time, I felt a lot of fear around my physical safety. So I spent a lot of my time when I was outside of school, of which I didn't really like school, but the time outside of school I spent practicing martial arts, doing weight training, just to kind of protect myself, to feel sort of safe in my environment. And so I was quite passionate about martial arts and weight training at the time. Um, I do recall at one point around that time dyeing my hair blue. Don't ask me why, but I just felt the urge. Yeah, so I think at the time when I decided to do it, I didn't know why I was doing it. And then in hindsight, it was kind of like an outright kind of rebellion against the norm. I sensed that was occurring to me during the time. And I remember my grandfather didn't necessarily approve. That was quite awkward when I went to see him with blue hair. And I did kind of get a sense that, I was being looked at a lot. And I mean, effectively, the punk rock era had been and gone, right? So, it wasn't anything too crazy. But I think for me, it was a sort of subconscious desire for freedom to express myself however I wanted to, whether I was accepted or not. And that was pretty powerful at that time.
You mentioned that school wasn't going that well. You didn't actually delve into that, but Mercury is related to thought, communication, learning as well. So any comments there?
Yeah, I just didn't like my school. The energy there wasn't great. It was it wasn't necessarily a place where I felt comfortable to learn. At the time, I was struggling at school, and I later went on to find out that I was dyslexic. And I think that's probably why there was this kind of problem with school, as in feeling comfortable in the way I learned and stuff, and how, typically, probably back then, it wasn't really something that was looked at very closely. Later on, I kind of figured that out. But yeah, I think that may be why.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. And how do you see creativity and evolution complementing this Uranian freedom principle during that time?
Um, I think I realized I didn't want to be at school and that I wanted to go to college. And so that came into kind of my mind at the time. I decided I wanted to go to college just to get away from school, kind of move on and do something that I wanted to do. Um, I had a few health issues around my kind of gut health. And I think that's important because it made me realize that there is other things going on in the world in relation to health. So, your environment would affect your health, the foods you eat, and stuff like that. So I became kind of through those experiences more aware of how you can look after your health in different ways. And I then kind of went on to try and look into those more and study those more. So through those processes of, say, being lactose intolerant and then realizing I had to change my diet and then realizing that, my gut health was important for my overall physical condition and how that can affect your mind as well. I kind of then went on to sort of study that at college. So that kind of, that process of initiation going through that pushed me in that direction to want to learn more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and back in the day, being lactose intolerant wasn't really a thing yet, I can imagine.
Yeah, well, I had a close friend who was pretty much on top of it all, but yes, it wasn't like a thing. Like back then, you kind of get like a bound book on the subject, and there was nothing really going on apart from that. Doctors would kind of look at you as very weird, um, and so it was really kind of on the kind of alternative extremes in terms of medicine and health.
Mhm.
But something that happened. I remember now. I was in a library at the time, and I remember having the disturbance in my stomach quite frequently every day, and I didn't know what it was. I just kept getting this cramping, and I remember being in the library, and there was a book faced down, like open page, face down, um, that I saw as I was walking past to go to a book section, and I kind of just looked at this book on the table, and I'm like no one's sitting there. So I was like, I pick up this book, and it was literally about like gut health, and it was
Wow.
lit on the page about lactose intolerance. And so, like, when I looked at that book and then read it, I was like, oh, I've got these symptoms, and that is uncanny, but that's true. It's a true story right there.
Wow. Okay. I mean, with Uranus, you've got the uh unexpected arising out of nowhere, right? And with Mercury, it's ideas, like, things that kind of change your perception, how you think as well. So that's an interesting manifestation, I would say, of
Yeah,
that.
definitely. And one more thing, kind of towards sort of 1996, 1997. A big thing that had an influence on my life was um, one of my friends introducing me to Jiddu Krishnamurti's work. And I remember the first book he gave me was The Awakening of Intelligence.
Mm.
And that in itself is kind of a lightning bolt, isn't it, really?
The title is perfect for Uranus opposite Mercury, I think.
Yeah, I think it really was. At the time, it was so unreal and mind-blowing, literally, because I'd been interested in psychology, obviously the physical health as well, mental health, and I'd been interested in philosophy as well. And this kind of bridged the gap because it really kind of allowed you to really question, the way we're thinking and ultimately how to be more aware and then to cultivate awareness. And that was something that was outside like emotional intelligence, even kind of like intellectual intelligence. It was something in its own right, which wasn't really in a religious sense, like Buddhism or something. Like it wasn't really based around that. So it was very unique, his work is, but equally powerful. And it made me realize that awareness is, so important in life and that I had the capacity to be aware. And that's been very influential in my life ever since. So very powerful points of time in my life.